Water. We're happy they're here today with us to go through some of this great work that we're doing for Wyoming. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Vice Chair, will you make roll call, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Choma.
Here.
Commissioner Glick. Commissioner Hosey. Commissioner Cott.
Here.
Commissioner Lawson.
Here.
Commissioner Pence.
Here.
Commissioner Suker.
Are you online?
Excused. Commissioner Craig is excused. Vice Chair Anselmi, I'm here, and Chairman Kaylee.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
With that, we'll turn it over to Select Water for their roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Donna, would you please call the roll?
Senator Ellis. Senator Guru.
Here.
See online.
He is online. We can see him.
Senator Hicks.
Excused.
Senator Kolb.
Present.
Senator Larson.
Here.
Representative Conrad.
Here.
Representative Crego.
Here.
Representative Larson.
Here.
Representative Nyman.
Here.
Representative Yin.
Here.
Vice Chairman Summers.
Here.
Chairman Steinmetz.
Here.
Chairman Steinmetz, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Donna. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I would like to just discuss a couple of things with our committee before we dive into your agenda,
That would be great.
into the deep water.
Yeah.
All right. Committee, we will be discussing today projects that will be included in the omnibus water bill. So several times during our committee work that is a joint meeting, we vote on things as we go along as well. We won't need to do that today. So pay careful attention because this will make up the omnibus water bill. There are some projects, and we saw some of them on screen yesterday, that are going to be a do not fund recommendation. And as you know, in the past, we have done a supplemental water bill, or we have included some projects on the general fund and omnibus water bills. And so as you go along, listen to the sponsors. They're here today. Even the do not fund, some of the recommendations, they are here today. So if you would listen carefully and make notations, we may want to include some of those in some on general fund monies. And as we go through, maybe the water development, I know you're here and you're working hard today. So maybe overnight, if you could provide us with a list tomorrow that would show us what those do not fund recommendations are and some of the projects we might be able to consider either adding into the omnibus water bill or doing a supplemental bill. It would be the pleasure of the committee to decide that. Would you find that helpful, committee? Go ahead, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Madam Chairman, thank you. I think that's a good idea. And I would hope that water development, could help us all out by maybe prioritizing a bit on those if they can. I know it puts them in a spot, but it'll help us evaluate what they think are the next best projects down the line in case there's any of them we want to add to. Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I appreciate that addition to my comments. Is there any further discussion from the committee on that? All right, seeing none, back to you, Mr. Chairman, and anything from you, Director, would that work for you?
Yes. Read it tomorrow.
All right, thank you very much.
Welcome.
I guess we're going to start with approval of the minutes from October 5th. Do I have a motion? Make that motion. We have a motion. We have a second. Motion then seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passed. Senator or Speaker?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just one thing, it would help, and maybe it would be staff or Jason's shop that would do it. If you can kind of tell us where we're at in this e-notebook, it would help at least me if nobody else keep up.
To you, Director.
And Mr. Chairman, so in response to that, to avoid confusion or add to it, we have two notebooks, the e-notebook, which is going to have a couple of the things we're going to be talking about right now as far as planning amendments or planning amendment, and then a construction sorry, it's going to take me a second to get in the groove here this morning, a planning contract approval. So that's going to be in the November 2023 e-notebook. And then once we get into recommendations on projects, then we're going to switch to the recommendations notebook. So for the time being here, go to your November 2023 e-notebook, and we are on page 27. Should be a memo on the Levitt Reservoir Expansion Final Design Consultant Contract. I'll wait until Representative Summers finds it, and then I'll assume that we're all in the same spot. And if you need help, we can jump up there and help you out real quick. Yes, you're on there. Okay. Okay, so the Levitt Reservoir Expansion Final Design, we've got and have had a contract with RJH Consultants. They've completed the design, done the bidding on Levitt Reservoir. We had an extensive discussion about Levitt Reservoir expansion back in August and the award of some of those bid packages. This is in reference to the original design contract, which one of the tasks associated with that design contract is to put together an emergency action plan for the reservoir. This would be a high hazard structure. So every high hazard structure in the state of Wyoming would have an emergency action plan in case something were to go wrong. Then there's kind of a call tree list, and who do you notify and to get people to safety, to get out of the way of a potential breach and flood. So that won't be completed until the reservoir is nearing construction, so they can bring in as-built drawings and into that emergency action plan. So it's an update based on the actual constructed project. Construction is estimated to take about 3 years. So we just want to extend the contract expiration date on the design contract because it will expire December 31st of 2023. And we want to extend that to December 31st of 2026. So that consultant complete that EAP near the end of construction. We can get that in place. And then we'll do a tabletop exercise with the local authorities and the sponsor. So everybody's aware of what the process would look like on the first fill and all that stuff. So with that, I'd ask for your favorable recommendation from the commission, because this is just a time extension only on this contract amendment.
Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to move that Amendment 3 to the consultant contract for services Levitt Reservoir Expansion Final Design between Wyoming Water Development Commission and RJH Consulting Incorporated be extended for 3 years.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? With that, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion passes. Chairman?
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, the next agenda item is item number 6. This is a planning project contract approval for the Green River, Little Snake River Basin's Conveyance Loss Level 1 study. This is on page 32 of the e-notebook. So this project, as we've talked about over the past year or so, is to try to quantify conveyance losses associated with irrigation canals in the upper Colorado River Basin within Wyoming, and to try to understand what those losses are, what the incidental uses are along the stream banks, evaporation, to get a handle on that and come up with a tool that could be applied, hopefully basin-wide, based on different factors such as geology and things like that. So have gone through the consultant selection process along with all the other planning projects. Stan Tech was chosen to contract with, and this is the contract that we have developed to put them under contract and start down the road with that study. So this does have funding involved with it, so we need the action of both the Select Water Committee and the Water Development Commission. Select Water Committee, typically your role on these types of things is review and recommend to the commission what your thoughts are, and then the commission would take action on it as well. So with that, I would ask for both bodies' favorable approval of the contract.
Select Water, I think we go first, Mr. Chairman. And so do I have a motion to recommend?
So moved.
Moved by Summers, seconded by Larson. Any discussion, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of the Green River Little Snake River Basin Conveyance Loss Level 1 study.
We have approval in a second. Any discussions? Any discussion? Seeing none? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next agenda item is we are going to start talking and working our way down through our 2024 funding recommendations. So just a reminder, yesterday, when I was kind of laying out kind of what our thought process was when we looked at all the demands and applications we had based on, and then comparing that to what we had for funding availability and how we went about our recommendations. There is on the e-notebook, which we've been working in here for the last two agenda items, on page 8. These are the spreadsheets that we brought up on the screen yesterday that kind of just is a general summary of each account balance we're starting with for the biennium for the next 2 years, and then generally what the funding recommendations are going through these projects. So it might just be a helpful piece of information to refer back to every once in a while if you need to. But for the most part, we're going to be working now in the recommendation notebook. And the first project is going to be the Bighorn Regional Joint Powers Board Lucerne Tank and Pump Station. This is in account 1, level 3. So today we're going to cover account 1, new development projects, construction project applications, which we received as of September 1. And then also we're going to revisit our planning projects, which we vetted fairly heavily back in May. We received those applications back in March. So we won't spend as much time on the planning projects. This is more for the construction projects. Each project, when I announce it, I'll ask that the sponsor representatives, if they're here, to come on up to the podium, and you'll have an opportunity to ask them any questions you may have, or some of them are also joining us remotely. So they may be up on the screen and we can interact with them that way. So sponsors that are in the room, I would suggest if you have an agenda with you and you see your project coming up, that just come on and head up here when it's your turn, and we'll keep things moving as quickly as we can. So has everybody found page 7 of the recommendation notebook? That'll be our first project, Bighorn Regional Joint Powers Board. Okay, so this is the Lucerne Tank and Pump Station. Bighorn Regional Joint Powers Board is the sponsor representative. This is for a new storage tank, transmission main, and pump station near Kirby, and the associated line and pump station to help with needed service improvements for maximum daily flows for Hot Springs County customers, and that would include Kirby and Lucerne. Originally, the application requested a second project, which would have been about a 6-mile transmission line near Worland. Because of our funding shortfalls, we asked for the sponsor to prioritize the project, and they thought the Lucerne Tank and Pump Station was their first priority. The overall construction estimate cost for that is $3,606,000. We are recommending a 50% grant for pre-construction only. And And pre-construction, just so we talk about this maybe once, consists of design, bidding documents, all the access permits you need, easements, and title of opinion. The last thing I would say about this before I hand it over to the sponsor representatives is, this is a good project. This is one of those where they need some easements. We know they're going to be back after they go through their pre-construction, get designs in place. They'll be back here in the next year or two for construction funding. And we know it's going to be a demand on our program here in the near future. So even though we're not recommending funding for construction at this time, I do think it would be one of those projects that Select Water Committee might want to consider for the supplemental water bill, we'll just call it. Because we know, like I said, it's going to be a demand on our program here in the near future. And so something for your consideration we'll probably have on the list. So with that, I would pass it over to John Joyce.
Thank you very much for taking comments today, and thank you for considering our project. For us, this is an important project. It's the very southern end of our system. We stretch from Burlington down to north of Thermopolis. So this Kirby Lucerne area is a southern end, and we do not have a storage tank down there. We have a pump station and a backup generator. So if the power goes off, the backup generator comes on and keeps everybody in water down at that end, but that's not ideal, and it doesn't provide for high peak flows if there's fires or water line breaks. So for the people at that end of the system, this is a much needed thing and something that we have been contemplating for years now. We're just now getting to it. So appreciate you very much considering this, and look forward to working on this project.
Questions?
Sean?
I don't. Jeff is here with our engineering firm, and so we can handle any technical questions you have, and I can give you any information about the board or customers down there if you'd like.
Questions, commissioners? Select Water? Yes, Senator.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so a question for you is, the recommendation here was to do not fund. There's a potential suggestion that maybe Select Water Committee would look at a supplemental water, which would be a general fund appropriation. So the hurdle for that to happen is we need your delegations in order to let your House members and your senators would be to support that to get introduced and passed within the legislature. And so I'm just curious if you can explain what conversation that you've had with all of the representatives and senators that are covered underneath this district project as far as supporting this moving forward.
Mr. Chairman, we have not had any discussions with our representatives about this particular project. We have discussed our whole system, the Joint Powers Board, and the distribution of the water that we provide the wholesale to all the towns in general, but we have not discussed individual projects and parts of it.
Mr. Chairman, I might suggest then that be something that we want to encourage all these folks to do between now and the January meeting. I think is what
Mr. Chairman, so it's I will put this in the form of a request. If Select Water was so inclined to recommend to move this forward at the general fund appropriation, that is it absolutely mandatory that we need to find out from you as the project sponsors, each individual senator and representative that you've contacted that supports the project, because the only way this is going to happen is if we have the support of your legislative delegation to use general fund money to do this. And so the obligation is now back on you. If we are inclined to do this as a Select Water Committee, to go out and get that support in the legislature to move that forward. So I guess it's the ball's in your court. And so I would hope that you would be able to report back to the Select Water Committee and the Commission that you've done your due diligence and you have the entire support of your delegation. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just one quick clarification. So the recommendation is to fund pre-construction only, and the construction dollars would potentially be a consideration for select water committee to fund with general funds.
So commissioners, I'll need a motion for that. And if you would, please include the language on Mr. or Senator Hicks's suggestion so that nobody's confused on that.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask if you want to vote on these in blocks, or if you want to do them individually, or how you'd like to do that, to just a consideration.
For sure, we want to do the recommendations on not funding an individual. The rest of them, if it's just a, funded, nothing strange going on, let's do those as a block.
Okay.
Well, so I need a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner.
I just have a question for Director Mead. So what we're doing here is we're saying we do want to fund the 143, the pre-construction costs for this amount. It says do not fund for the water line to the airport. But then we want to make it subject to select water approving general funds for the project.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Anselmi Dalton, I believe that's probably a separate motion. I think your motion is based on acceptance of the director's recommendation to fund pre-construction in the amount of $143,300. The suggestion by Senator Hicks, I think that's a select water committee suggestion. I think the message has been provided. I don't know that necessarily needs to be a part of the Water Development Commission's motion, because that's a separate pot of money for construction. And none of this has anything to do with the pipeline from Moreland down to the airport. That's just being set aside, and at some future date, we will probably consider that as another application in the future from the Joint Powers Board.
So, Mr. Chairman.
I just want to make sure select water is okay with that. Water.
She said, yeah.
Senator Hicks.
I think that we would probably concur with that. I don't know that we would need to vote on that at this point in time. We'll have to make a decision, but I think that we would, any recommendation or support from the commission to that effect would be appropriate. So, but yeah, I think, Madam Chairman's back. She can answer that question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we would definitely entertain your recommendation, and then it will be up to the committee as to how they would choose to move forward.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman and Director, we essentially could do these 4 projects as a block, is what you're saying, because we're just recommending going with the director's recommendation on these 4 projects, correct?
Mr. Chairman, yes. If you agree with our recommendations, you could vote on them as a block. If there are some you don't, then you would pull those out individually.
Okay.
Vote on a block and then vote on the ones you pull out separately.
Thank you, Director. So my recommendation, Mr. Chairman, would be that we vote on these 4 projects as a block. And so would we have the director go through the 4 projects first for us then?
Mr. Chairman, that's up to you.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could get just a little clarification, maybe I don't understand exactly how we're going to do it this year. At the next meeting, the commission and the select water committee are going to meet separately. So the commission will be approving, and some of these, and the select water committee is going to be recommending to not fund some of them.
Mr. Chairman, I might be able to clarify that. So once we get done today, there will be a lot of discussion, I'm sure. The commission will be voting on the recommendations. The select water committee will be here to understand and be involved in the discussion. So I think everybody will be on the same page, hopefully, by the end of the day on what's being funded and what's not. And perhaps later this afternoon, as Chairman Steinmetz has suggested, there will be another discussion about the projects that do not fund. And when I say do not fund, we have some projects that are just do not fund, regardless of pre-construction or construction. Some projects we're recommending funding through the program. for pre-construction, but we don't have the dollars for construction. That's where potentially Select Water comes in with this idea of a supplemental water funding through the general fund. Hopefully by the end of the day or by the end of the day tomorrow, we will be provided direction from the Select Water Committee on how to draft the omnibus bills for the January meeting, which could potentially have some of that general fund funding in there. So I think what Senator Hicks is asking for is by the January meeting and this is kind of in the form of a question, for the sponsors that are maybe associated with some of that general fund funding to report back to the office between now and January of your discussions with the legislators in your area that would be involved in that particular project and their support or non-support for that particular project. We could then provide that to the commission and the Select Water in the January meeting.
Very good.
Good with you, Senator Hicks? Does that sound appropriate? Okay.
John, are you okay with that?
Yeah, that sounds good. We'll be working closely with the staff on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, we'll move on then to the next project in the block under account 1, level 3. Next project is under pure. So we are now on page 15 of the recommendation notebook. This is the cloud seeding for the Medicine Bow Sierra Madre range. This has a lot to do with the discussion and the information we received yesterday during the workshop. So this is for the aerial seeding for not this year, but for next year. So for the 2024-2025 winter season, this would be the 7th year of operational seeding. We also, as just to remember from yesterday, this has the second priority down in the Never Summer Mountains that we have a contract with the Jackson County Water Conservancy District to fund the Upper North Platte if we're not using the plains or the plain in Wyoming. So with that, the overall budget for next year would be $875,000. The Cheyenne Board of Public Utilities for a long time has been providing $50,000 to that overall budget. So the budget request for cloud seeding in the Medbo Sierra Madres for the 2024-25 aerial season would be $825,000. And with that, I'd ask if there's any questions or discussions.
Commissioners or comments? Any questions from Select Water?
Okay. Moving on to page 18 of the e-notebook. Again, talking about cloud seeding. This time we're talking about the Wind River, west side of the Sierra Madres. This is our ground-based program. And the flow enhancement that we would receive from cloud seeding with this program would end up in the Colorado River Basin, as we somewhat yesterday also. The overall budget for the 2024-25 winter season would be $793,650. And as I mentioned yesterday, we have a number of lower basin funding partners in the Colorado River Basin. So Wyoming would come up with 37% share. And the overall requested budget and recommendation is for $298,651. And again, with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
I think that's page 18 of the recommendation.
Yes, I'm sorry. Did I say 16?
Oh, you said the e-notebook, but.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Thank you.
Page 18 on the recommendation notebook.
Thanks. Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question. I don't, if Julie's here, but Director, just a question. I know that Forreston area was looking at some cloud seeding efforts, and I assume that that's not a part of this.
Mr. Chairman, if that's through the Eden Valley Irrigation and Drainage District, that would not be part of this. We do have Julie Gonzar online.
I was just wondering, if that was included in this.
Can you hear me?
Thanks, Barry.
Members of the commission, Barry Lawrence, Deputy Director of Planning. The Eden Valley Irrigation District, we work with them hand in hand. We actually provide the forecast to them, so they have their own little operation they continue to run. It's ground-based. They have propane units and ground-based generators along Highway 191. And that's a long-standing program that's been going for 40 to 50 years, and it was actually a turnkey system by the University of Wyoming. They handed it over to the irrigation district to continue to run. So we coordinate with them and they get all our forecasts and everything to help their operations.
Commission. Select Water, any questions? Nope. Thank you, Mr. Director. Move on.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, the next project is on page 21 of the recommendation notebook. This is the Skyline Improvement and Service District Well Connection. I would say, sponsor, when you come up and after I'm done talking here for just a second, introduce yourself. But this is the sponsors of Skyline Improvement and Service District. This is for a well that was drilled under a groundwater grant, and the proposed project would replace pumps in their existing system, three existing wells to modernize the operation.
I'm Bob Norton. I'm on the board directors of the Skyline Improvement and Service District. And we concur, not entirely, but we concur with the staff recommendation, and we'd very much appreciate the grant to complete our project. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do we have any questions? Mark? No? Select Water?
Okay.
Speaker?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So how many, and I haven't read it, so that's my fault, but how many customers does this serve?
There are 90 customers. Currently, there are 86 operable and 90, for more potential.
Mr. Chairman, I might clarify that's taps. So the population is a little more than that.
Chairman, Commissioner?
You brought up a comment that you don't concur with the director's recommendation. Can you expand on that?
Yes, we do. We would concur with the recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, I might just point out, I think the original request was for 67%. That might be what he's referring to.
Well, it was,
but
the other part of it was because of the unique design where we can avoid having to build storage facilities by using the variable speed drives and the alluvial aquifer as our storage. We were hoping to replace the existing pumps with that, with variable speed pumps and so forth. But I understand why, you have a shortage of funding, and we'll make it work with this recommendation.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, do we want to move on this block then first? Yep. Director? Okay, Commissioner, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion.
Commissioner?
All right. I would move that the level 3 projects for the Bighorn Regional JPB Luzerne Tank and Pump Station is in the amount of $143,300 for pre-construction costs. The cloud seeding for the Medicine Bow and Sierra Madre Mountain Range aerial in the amount of $825,000, with the Cheyenne Board of Public Utilities paying $50,000 to reduce the cost. And third, the cloud seeding in the Wind River and Sierra Madre Mountains in the amount of $298,651. And fourth, that the Skyline ISD well connection in the amount of $448,000, which is a 50% grant, be approved by the commission.
Well, I appreciate that very detailed motion. Do we have a second? With a motion and a second? Any questions or discussion? Questions or discussions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those not approved say no. Motion carries. Director?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we'll now move on to our account 1, level 3 amendments.
In general, do you take into account the ability of the project owner to pay versus not some that are less able to pay? And if so, how do you do that? And how would we see that in this format you have?
Mr. Chairman, as part of the planning studies, all that is considered. They look at their existing rates and what the potential loan or funding that they would have involved in a project, and then how rates would then increase to accommodate the additional payment. You can look in the recommendation, or I'll use the last one as an example. I should probably go by page since you're looking at it. Just a minute here. So I believe on page 23 would be an example of this. So when you look down at rates number 5 on 23, you can look at pre-project, post-project numbers in regards to average monthly water bill, what their water rates look like currently. And then you get down a little bit further into a financial statement on the next page, which would refer to revenues generated with the increased rates and what the debt retirement would look like with project, without project, or pre-project, post-project. Okay.
Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, I mean, so I get that, right? So you have a rate that changes, but you don't know whether the individuals behind that rate increase, has the ability to pay for it or not pay for it. I guess that's the question is, do you take into account, I can think of rural subdivisions in my area where it's all of it's trailer houses, right? Trailers and, obviously those people can't pay as much on a rate increase on their water as others could. So do you take into account the need as far as need-based in any of these projects?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if I can answer that specifically. I might need Barry's help, but I think, like I mentioned, all that is discussed. Say trailer park, if it's within a city, I think a lot of those rates get dispersed amongst all users. And then if the sponsor, that particular town or district, feels like that's something that they can do, then they'll typically come forward with an application for a level 3 construction project. So in the end, it's their consideration on whether or not they can, I guess, get their users to pay those rates and if they're affordable or not. And if not, then they probably wouldn't move forward with the project. Or they would need to go look for funds in other places to help alleviate some of those shortfalls.
Oh, Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can't judge this microphone very well. A question I have, it revolves around the reserves that said districts may have or not have. Do you give any consideration, I guess to say bonus consideration, if they carry reserves? As opposed to not having reserves, let's say, in a case for a project. Is there any consideration given to give them an incentive to keep more reserves? And the second question would be is, are you only looking at their rate increase, their necessity for because of a loan they take out? Are you only looking at the half of the, let's say it's 50% you'll fund? Are you only looking at that half of the 50%? So my question would be is, do you consider that frankly, an incentive to keep on doing what we're doing? In other words, so they wouldn't get any reserves, or they'd be less apt to build reserves up for the future for project or for the eventual replacement of their infrastructure. So I guess if you could help me understand that a little bit more. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, I think it's part of the planning studies. We put all that information out there, and I think definitely would encourage for having reserves or future operation, maintenance, and replacement of their system project or system components as they get to be an aged system. We can't require that. I think that's something that our office recognizes sometimes when we see sponsors that don't carry reserves at all. I think that was actually something that at least in the, I don't remember how many years ago, I'll say 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, the legislature did away with a requirement to have an operate where you're not holding reserves unnecessarily, or could you be using those funds for something else? But everybody likes, if there's not a project in front of them, membership tends to not want to pay for assessments because they're thinking of the here and now. I can't remember what your other question was now. The first question, maybe. Or if that answered it.
Question. Thank you for the answer.
Senator?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and just trying to address, I hope address some of Representative Summers' concerns under the statutory construct. A project sponsor can come to the commission and ask for up to 75% of the project in the form of a grant. And you know, we're at 50% now. A year ago, we were at 67, but the commission has some discretion under hardship cases to go up to 75%. I'm aware of at least one case in the last 6 or 7 years where that's their limitations, but the Select Water Committee then went in on a municipal storage project that had the whole water tank had basically slid off of the hill. They had exhausted all the FEMA money, and Select Water Committee amended the bill to fund that at 100%. So there is some discretionary through the applicant can come in under a hardship case and ask for a higher grant than the normal. So I think that's built in as it's really incumbent upon the project sponsor to feel if they feel that they just can't carry that burden to in their application and request to the commission to ask for that higher cost. I hope that helps answer part of your question.
Any other questions or comments? We'll move on. Director, we were talking about on this next block of projects to maybe pull the do not funds and any other extra maybe that shared an aerial water supply transmission one for some possible communication.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's appropriate if you would like. We can go through the conversations, and if you agree with our recommendations, you could probably still vote on them as a block. But if you feel you want to pull them out separately and have additional conversation, that's totally up to you.
Mr. Chair, and the small water one, which you're recommending funding for 1 million. So I think it's fairly straightforward. I'm sure that if the other commissioners agree, I would say we could vote on them as a block, but if they want any of those pulled off, that's fine. I would probably recommend that we pull off at least the 3 do not funds.
Okay.
Commissioners? Any other discussion about that? You're good with it?
Okay, so we'll proceed and we'll see how it plays
Yeah.
out here.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're, like I mentioned previously, we're going to get into our level 3 construction amendments now. We are on page 30 of the recommendation notebook. This project is the Arapahoe Water Supply 2016 project sponsored by the Northern Arapahoe Tribe. The project consists of 3 separate transmission main sections, and the sponsor has obtained all their funding through Department of Indian Health Services. But they've got one of those projects complete, and because of delays with easements, the project schedule has been delayed. So they're asking for a time extension for those additional 2 sections of pipeline that they need to get put in the ground. And so our recommendation is to extend that reversion date in the legislation from July 2024 to July 1st of 2026. And we have a sponsors rep if you want to introduce yourself and answer any questions.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman and Committee and Select Committee. My name is Jola Wallowing-Bull. I'm the Director for the Northern Arapahoe Tribal Engineering Department. And I'm here to answer any questions for the extension that we are requesting.
Just for Jola? Questions? Select Water, any questions? Okay, well, thank you for coming down.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Director?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the next project is on page 31. This is the Buffalo Wells and Transmission 2019 project sponsored by the city of Buffalo. There was a previous phase with this project, which included drilling and development of 7 alluvial wells. And the current phase is for the design and construction of the collection and transmission piping and to tie that in with their existing water treatment plant. There's been a little bit of a delay due to COVID and some project engineering. So the request is for a time extension, and our recommendation is to extend that reversion date from
City of Buffalo, and this is Kevin Silbernagel. He's actually the Public Works Director up there now. But yeah, we've had quite a few problems with our engineering firm that we're dealing with, simply inaction from them. So that's mostly what's held this project up.
Yeah, questions for Leslie?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So my question is, so how are you rectifying it? If you've got many problems, or did you can them and get another one, or?
We're fixing to can them. For the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this going to be enough time? I mean, do you feel confident that you're going to be able to? Okay, that was my question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? Select Water Commissioners? Thanks for coming down. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck on your project.
The next project is on page 32 of the recommendations notebook. This is the Claremont Well Connection 2019 for the town of Claremont. The project is for completion of a well drilled under a level 2 project and the new transmission main from the well connecting to the town's existing water system. They are requesting a time extension due to some unexpected water quality issues. I think they're having some issues with high turbidity, and they're planning to do some long-term flow pump tests and trying to get that under control. So the the recommendation from our office is to extend that reversion date from July 1st, 2024 to July 1st of 2026. And I think we might have the mayor, Chris Schock and Levi Heim virtually. If you guys have any questions. Can you guys hear us online?
Yes, can you hear me? This is Mayor
Mr.
Shaw.
Mayor?
And this is Levi Heim.
If Mr. Schock and Mr. Heim would turn on their video and their mic.
They're there now. Oh, they're there now.
Go.
Mr. Schock?
Mayor Home, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear us, Mayor Home?
I can hear everyone. This is Levi Heim.
I can hear everyone. This is Mayor
Do you have
Shaw.
any questions? Well, do you have any questions? We can do our best to try to answer them and try to work out the glitch we're having here.
Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just was curious if they have resolved the unexpected water quality issues. I mean, is that already coming along pretty well?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's in the process. That's what I mentioned on their plans are to do a long-term flow pump test at much lower, slower rates. And they have not done that yet, but they're in the process of trying to work through that.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Is somebody online trying to comment?
We can see, we can't hear, and he can't hear
Yeah,
us.
we can't hear you. Okay. Yes, Commissioner.
Jason, these are all time extensions, right?
Airman, Commissioner Glick, so far, yes, all of them that we've discussed are just time extensions right now.
Okay.
We're getting to some other ones that would be requests for funding on the amendments.
All right. And we probably don't need too many questions for the extensions, right?
That's up to you guys if you have questions or not.
Sure, if there's any items you want pulled up, just ask and we can pull them off and then go through them in extended detail as well. Okay, one last chance online. Is there anybody we can help? It's just like talking to my wife. Oh, this isn't recorded.
I heard that.
Us, Mayor can hear us, we just can't hear him. So,
Correct.
Mr. Mayor, we appreciate you joining us. There were no questions. Apologize for whatever technical difficulties we have. As well as Chris Schock. I'm sorry, Chris Schock is the mayor. This is Gillette Madison Pipeline Project for the city of Gillette. The last contract to complete the project will install pumping and electrical equipment to connect the final 3 wells into the system. And the contract is in the process of being awarded. The city believes from conversations with manufacturers that the lead time for procuring the pumping and electrical equipment could be about 70 weeks. So because of that, they probably wouldn't finish in time. So the recommendation is for a time extension on the reversion date from July 1st, 2024 to July 1st of 2026. And with that, I'd hand it over to the sponsor to answer any questions.
Morning, Joe Shane, city engineer with City of Gillette. Everything that was stated is correct. So if there's any questions on it, the biggest thing we have a challenge with is the lead time, as you can imagine. So any other questions with it regarding We're looking to award this at the next council meeting. So we did get concurrence. So staff has recommended it for us to be in concurrence. So that's great. We appreciate that. And in the next 2 weeks, we should award it and get going. But these are all just preliminary talks from the electrical supplier.
Appreciate that. Any questions, commissioners? Select Water. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is just another one of those I do not know questions. I'll wait till Jason is done. So Jason, my question is on time extensions. How often do you just keep granting time extensions, or is it been your history usually a one-time time extension? Obviously every project's different, so it probably depends, but at some point you're tying up money for a long period of time. So how long do you usually, I mean, how many time extensions do you usually give before you go? Maybe no more.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the norm is 2 years, but they've been all over the board. Some of them, and a lot of these time extensions throughout history have been related to easements and the inability to get easements in a timely manner. So as I discussed yesterday, we're trying to handle that better in our office by only doing pre-construction now, getting all your easements in place before you ask for the construction money.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So all the previous extensions, Director, were the first extensions for the project. I mean, I guess that would be helpful if you could, if there is like this the second or third or whatever extension, could you, I don't know, add that on to the information?
Mr. Chairman, I'll do my best to recognize that and try to point that out. At this point, I guess we won't go backwards, but as going forward, we'll try to point that out. Is that fair?
It's fair, Mr.
Okay, as far as the ones we've already talked about. Okay. All right, so I'm being asked for a short break, but I think since the rest of the project and the amendments seem to be all in-person sponsors, that we continue through the amendments, and then at the end of that, we could take a break and make sure we could do some testing with Senator Grew and just making sure that the glitch isn't on our end. Does that seem reasonable? Okay. All right. So the next project is on page 34. This is the Happy Valley Water Transmission and Storage 2023 for the Happy Valley Water Improvement and Service District. So this is regional in nature. The community of Valley and Osmond are trying together a regional system where they're replacing their old and failing water system transmission lines and constructing a new storage tank to promote the regional system, as I mentioned. We gave them pre-construction funding last year, and they've come back and asked for construction funds this year, but based on the current progress of the design and the fact that they need to get probably a special use permit or some kind of an easement on the Forest Service where they plan to put their tank, we are suggesting that a do not fund, but they're not quite ready for that construction funding for the program. And that's really due to our funding shortfalls. But we do think this is a good project. Like I said, it supports regionalization, and we know they're going to be back hopefully here in the near future. I think the sponsor and the engineer that works for them think they can probably get that done faster than we're anticipating. This project has ARPA funds that would have a timeline on them as well. So might be a good candidate for the Select Water Committee's consideration if there's some general funds available. So with that, I'd hand it over to the sponsor.
Chairman, Water Board, Select Committee, 8 reps. I'm Mark Erickson.
No, folks, if the Select Water Committee was so inclined to provide other funding source, there is a expectation that you will go back and talk to your entire legislative delegation and get a letter of support for this project if the Select Water Committee determines that they want to fund it through other sources of funds. Is that something that you will provide?
We have been in contact with our representatives all along here.
Well, you got state senators over there too. We need the whole, it's
Yeah.
two different bodies over there in Cheyenne that have to pass this bill. And so we need both sides.
We will diligently work on them.
Work them over, will you? Thank you.
They've been very supportive of us the whole 6 years I've been at this, so. Any other questions?
We would appreciate that letter. That'd be great. Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to give a vote of appreciation for, the hard work and Director Mead mentioned this, the hard work that you did in regionalization. I know it's not easy, but it's an example for others in similar situations. And I know that there's another situation up in Star Valley that they could follow your lead on. So thank you for that effort.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question you brought up about ARPA funding, and there's potentially a time issue. How much in ARPA funds? And the other question would be is if you don't get general funds from the state, can you take out a loan to cover it so you won't lose the ARPA funding if there's a time issue? Could you please, explain, your situation?
Well, we received our, $3 million in ARPA funding first of the year, whenever it was. Before we got that money, we applied for it and it was all delegated out. We weren't sure we were going to get any of that. So we came to a year ago to try to keep something moving. But we did get some of the ARPA money. We have started in construction design finally. So things are starting to move along in that direction. And we're going to go take it as far as it'll get us and keep working on trying to get enough money to keep this project going so we can finish it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My point is that are you willing to go out and get a loan as opposed to losing the ARPA fund?
Revolving fund, I guess it is. And at one time to get into the ARPA, we did go through our local bank there and got some backup from them. But the interest rates are way up there when we do that. But we're looking at every advantage and everything that we can. And we want to keep this project moving forward. Because the longer it goes on and the harder it gets but we are going after any funding we can go after. And if we have to borrow some money, we probably will.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I don't have a question. I just want to thank you for, when I read this, and I don't know much about it, but we'll replace old and failing water system transmissions for both a district and Osmond. The fact that you're trying to do a really good project here in multiple, with multiple entities, I think is really good. I think those kind of cleanups need to happen all over the state. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? Select Water.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Jason Linford with Sunrise Engineering,
Yes, Jason.
Just to clarify for the senator's question, we do have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And plan A would be here. And so any additional help, if things came through with the general fund, that would be awesome. But we do have a plan B and a plan C in order to not lose the ARPA funds.
Thanks, Jason. Well, any other questions? We appreciate all your hard work on that. Oh, Commissioner Glick.
this is probably directed more towards Jason, I guess, and the Wyoming Water Development Commission. What my question is when we don't fund, we vote not to fund, and then the sponsor is trying to request funding from the general fund, and they put all of their representatives and senators for assistance but does the Wyoming Water Development Office, do we give them a recommendation or some sort
Forward, I think just your verbal support would be good. I don't know that you need, if it's up to you guys, I guess, the supplemental funding through general fund potentially is really a select water committee action. You can sure support that action in a motion if you'd like, or however you want to do that.
Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, and I think that brings up a good point. You know, a letter from you guys supporting the projects would be great. And you could also go home and talk to your representatives in your area as well, because we always like it when people are further educated. This is a fairly complex committee. As everybody on here knows, we're digging through a lot of paperwork and it takes a while to get us broke in. So if you could help us break in the rest of the legislature, we would certainly appreciate it. And so if you wanted to send a letter of recommendation and then reach out to your own local representatives and senators, we'd sure appreciate that, because as we move this forward, it would really help us on the floor. And it also educates everyone, as far as many people think this is just for agricultural uses, but we do a lot of municipal work that affects a lot of people across the state. And so if you can help us, we'd sure appreciate it.
Wonderful idea. So Commissioner Glick, you can head that up for us. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate your consideration. Thank you all.
So, Mr. Chairman, when we provide the list of projects that would potentially fall into that category, we'll provide that to the commission as well. So you can maybe refer to that in your letter.
Perfect.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just another question. Who are we writing the letter to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe you'd want to write it to the Select Water Committee and then transmit it to your elected officials. You represent regions across the state. I would transmit it to them as well, and maybe follow up with a phone call or a cup of coffee.
And Mr. Chairman,
Senator,
I would just say good luck. I'm just cognizant of the fact that a long time ago, somebody told me that you can tell a legislator a lot. You just
Funding it, does that reduce the $3 million request, or is it still going to be 3 million from the general fund? I just don't know how that works.
Mr. Chairman, so that particular project has $3 million of ARPA. They're still looking for the request to us, or what we would recommend would be, let's see here, $2,837,450.
any other questions? Yep, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason, could there be information given on how many taps on all these projects are representing? Is it somewhere else in the document? Yes, could you help me with that? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, Mr. Chairman, the ones that are asking for funding, we did try to put in last year or the previous recommendation. So on Happy Valley, the number of taps served would be 101. And I think their current population is a little over 300 for the Happy Valley Osmond area.
Moving on.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the next project is the Lander Storage Tanks and Pump Station 2019 for the city of Lander. Project is to replace 3 existing water tanks and a hospital pumping station that are near failure. The city bid this project out in spring of 2022, but the costs came in significantly higher. They were back here last year asking for some additional funds, and those were provided to them. They're now under construction, but they just don't think they can get it completed prior to July 1st of 2024. So they've asked for a time extension. And our recommendation would be to extend that by 1 year to July 1st of 2025.
Chairman, Commissioners, Select Water Committee. Thank you today for letting us talk, and just wanted to say thank you for your support of this project and considering this time extension. I'm Lance Hopkin. I'm the City Engineer and Public Works Director for the City of Lander. Project is going extremely well. We have a local contractor doing the work. The existing tank has been demoed. The construction site for the pump station is up and going. It's a critical project that replaces 3 failing storage tanks for us with 1 new one. So thank you for your support in considering this extension.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Select Water.
The under tab or page 42. This is the Lander Well and Transmission Pipeline 2021 for the same sponsor. This was to complete and connect 4 wells to their city storage tank. And the estimated project cost in 2021 was $1,320,000. But due to inflation, the current estimate was $3,579,000. Our office determined that some of these projects were not eligible costs under our program, so that the costs that would be eligible would equate to about $2,911,333. There was a couple of items that we felt could use some value engineering that we mentioned to the sponsor. The project is ready to be rebid. And the city had applied for ARPA funds, but we're not successful in getting those ARPA funds. So at this time, our recommendation is to, complete that value engineering. And once they have bids in hand, if they need and haven't been able to find other funding, when they have a firm cost and a firm price to come back for sponsors contingency funds at the next available meeting. So with that, I'd hand it over to the sponsor.
Yes, thank you. Chairman, Commissioner, Select Water. This project is emergency backup supply for the city of Lander. We're a surface water only fed system. And we've had several near misses in the past, ones that have kept us up all night and ran our storage tanks nearly dry. So what this well project does for us, this gives us the ability when water is not available or we're having difficulty making clean water, being able to turn that on, supply the city, and then get our chemistry correct in the plant. So an extremely important project for us, probably the second most important beyond the project you've already funded, which is our storage tank replacement project. We do understand the recommendation for value engineering. We've already removed the pipeline and made it open channel. We've adjusted the building. We put our own engineering funds outside of what has been awarded into trying to reduce the project cost to date. So this was at a 90% review. The recommendation was made to look at value engineering, and we're trying to drive those costs down all into eligible costs. One part of this project that I think has driven up the cost is opening up a bypass from our water treatment plant to be able to divert that water open channel to the river in case there's an emergency. Our plant is only to this pipeline to discharge some of that water. will allow us to automatically open valves, discharge that water, and keep people safe. So we think that it's a necessary part of the project. We think the original engineer's estimate may have been low, but that was done in a level 2 study. And so we're back today, hoping to put in a project that works well in the future, that we can maintain, and is a great project for Lander and something that can be supported by the state. We're happy to work with the recommendation and to come back, bid this project, see where it comes in. We're a little concerned because it seems like all projects are coming in a little high, and funding has been an issue as far as finding it and making things work. We're willing to dig into our reserves to make this project happen. We're already preparing to bid this as soon as possible so that we can work with the office and commission on this project. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have a quick question for you. Were you able to use any of the old tanks for an emergency storage?
Yes, we've been using the old tanks, and as we've taken them out of service, what happened with those tanks is the rebar in the roof started to fail, and they were splitting, and you could see strands shooting out and concrete breaking and cracks in the roof. So we've lengthened the life of those through lining and other methods for as long as possible, but we still have 2 in service as we replace the other ones. So we're operating in a little bit of an area where our operators are pretty scared, but we'll make it work.
Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions, and it might be more for Jason, but so this is up by 120%, I see in your notes, and then we'll come back to the sponsor contingency fund and do the value engineering. So explain to me how that would work. So would that be an approval by the commission, or would Select Water weigh in on that again? And then is there some kind of a cap as far as how much they can use out of sponsor contingency, and how much money do we have available there?
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Steinmetz. So the sponsor would put in a request to the office in a letter format, probably with a resolution from their board asking for the same. We would then consider that, at the office level, how much funding do we have? I believe in account 1, we have about 5.4 million in sponsors contingency. I think we would then probably also consider what we've been considering with all these new red, consider that, as well as we've been handling, or at least providing that information to the Select Water Committee as well. Being as you have 2 separate meetings in January, it'd be slightly awkward, but I think that would result in an amendment for more than $5,000. Would have to consider that amendment to that agreement based on the sponsor contingency funds. Did I say anything wrong, Bill? Okay. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, you mentioned reserves. How much are your current reserves?
We try to keep about 2 million of reserves. But I guess to answer reserves, we know we're in deficit. Some of the water lines and distribution lines within the community are 100 years old or more. And so we just keep those in place so that we can operate if there is an emergency. But knowing that there's a lot of projects we want to do in the future, and trying to maintain a correct level of reserves to keep 6 months of operation going.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, question for Director B. My question is, specifically, the WWO seek more, in this case, the principal more value. Understanding the definition of value, help me understand how is the value. That's this value engineering just specific to this project, or is it a component within project management scheme?
Mr. Chairman, I would say it's part of what our office does when we review plans and specs that the engineer. So at this point, when we get to level 3 construction, the sponsor is hiring their engineer under a separate agreement from the water development. Water development has an agreement with the sponsor. So the sponsor will end up, again, having a contract with the engineer for design and construction management, as well as an eventual contract with the construction contractor to get the job done. So we review the plans and specs from the engineer that's hired by the sponsor. And in this case, we saw, for example, the original design showed getting water back to the river in a pipe. And we thought, well, couldn't you do that with an open channel for quite a bit cheaper? So we proposed that to the sponsor.
Representative.
Due diligence component, AKA value component of every review of project. Prior to trading this.
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Thank you.
I would say in addition to not only after they receive construction funding, but prior to, because we go through our planning process and we have a good idea of needs versus wants. You've heard me say that in the past, and what's the best alternative. And that's why we pay 100% of planning studies, is because it's an unbiased look at, is this a good investment of state dollars, and what's the most economical way to get that on the ground for the needs that the sponsor has, rather than for the sponsor to be paying for something like that. And then the engineer might have a little more bias to look at maybe what they want rather than what they need. So it's kind of, we're trying to do an unbiased look through the planning studies.
Yes.
It's the first time that I've seen the verbiage more value engineering. That's what.
Yeah, and that was, I guess, a response to the original application and request. So the body that's looking at this currently today would understand that. And as we heard from the sponsor, they are going through that process, has already gone through that process of looking at those project components and changing them. Yeah.
And as a sponsor, we know that a third or more of this project falls on us as far as paying for it. So we're trying to keep that cost as low as possible, yet still meet our needs and meet the function of the project as well. So it's in our best interest to look at all sorts of ideas and considerations, and then work with our engineer to try to drive those project costs down. But thank you so much for your time today.
Appreciate you coming in. Thank you. Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, I guess, so does our commission support the request for sponsors contingency fund, or is this going to be put in that on this bill, or help me out? Just
Mr.
remind me
Chairman,
one more
this,
time.
sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Chairman, this would be a future item to consider when we get a request from the sponsor. The earliest time frame would be the January meeting, and we'll consider anything we might receive then.
Questions?
2014 Wyoming legislature. So this is not the first time we've had a time extension. Senator Kolb. Consists of a pump station, transmission pipeline, pressure reducing station, and a 1 million gallon storage tank. They did bid the project in the summer of 2022. The bids came in high, but to the city's credit, they are covering the difference in the inflation, and the project's under construction now. They just don't think they can complete it by July 1st of 2024. So they've asked for a time extension, and we're recommending a 1-year time extension to July 1st of 2025. And I'd hand it over to the sponsor.
Chair, Madam Chair, members of the commission, and Select Water. I'm William Winkler, senior engineer and project manager with the city of Laramie, and with me is the city engineer Eric Japp. Like Mr. Mead said, the project is currently under construction. We would be approximately 70% complete. Currently, we have a tank constructed. We have water line being installed to the tank. Currently, we don't have a means to fill the tank to do the leak testing and some of those items that need to be done. The contractor is continuing to work through construction for the winter months, but has discussed the need to delay some construction methods for favorable weather, like such as coating and backfilling tank and leak testing once we get to that point. So with that, that's our concerns with being able to complete by the current completion date.
Thank you. Did this project have a little bit of a delay at the beginning of it?
Mr. Chair, did have a delay due to easements. We were delayed 2 to 3 years negotiating easements for the major property owner for the alignment of the project.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions? Water questions? Well, you can see with that kind of delay, why you guys are asking now. We appreciate that. Thank you.
The next project is on page 45. This is the Sheridan Area Water Supply Transmission 2020 project for the city of Sheridan. So the city of Sheridan requested design and construction funding for this, as mentioned in the 2023 session. This is a key main for them and potentially pick up some commercial properties associated with the airport property. That didn't work out quite the way I think everybody expected, and increased quite significantly. And I would say the sponsor is reconsidering the cost of that project and the benefit of that project to move forward at its current cost estimate, and have asked to, I guess, provided us a letter to relinquish the funds and the little bit of funding that has been spent on the design, which we just recently paid for an invoice, and that's an amount of $252,000 and change, to repay that back to the commission and relinquish the rest of the funding, which would be to the tune of about $3.1 million. So with that, I'd hand it over to Dan Roberts with the city of Sheridan to explain more.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of our Water Development and Select Water Committee. As Director Mead said, I'm Dan Roberts. I'm the Utilities Director for the city of Sheridan. With me here today is Jacob Martineau, the Assistant Utilities Director. This is a first time I've ever really been before anybody talking about relinquishing grant funds, but everything Director Mead laid out is true in fact. And I would say that first start by saying that this is still a good project. But it's a good project where costs have escalated to the point where the benefits that we're seeking to receive from it no longer justify the expenditures of taxpayers' dollars that we're looking at. This project began with a 2020 application and design through 21. And as of September, due to price escalations from a $4.4 million project to an $8.6 million project. And so even slightly different than what you're seeing on the numbers here today, the current estimate for that project is 11.3. I believe there's about 420,000 of that's not eligible under water development, but we would be here before you today asking for another $4.2 million to proceed continues to serve its intended purpose for the community. And we have confidence that we can continue to maintain it in that fashion and not spend the money to completely replace that with the goal of just not having to fix some leaks on a transmission line. So it's not in a dire situation. We know at some point that line will need to be replaced whole or in part. But at this cost, it doesn't really justify the benefit that we're looking at now. And we feel like there's some useful life still left in that line that we need to take advantage of. So with that, we've made the tough decision to say, turn the money back and just move on and continue to operate it in the fashion that we are.
Well, we appreciate that and coming in with this. Any other questions, commissioners? Commissioner?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, looking ahead, I mean, there might be a time where it does need to be replaced. Is that correct? Or
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. It is identified in our master plan as a top priority. But I would say under a rehab condition, it's a replacement of an existing line, and it'll probably continue to remain in that status. What we're really saying is the urgency at the cost now doesn't warrant moving forward with the project. So I would say to you, we might be back in the future for whether it's a phase of that or in its entirety. But hopefully we can get a lot more years out of this line before we need to do that.
well, we appreciate your efforts. We went through with the irrigation districts failing, inventorying failing infrastructure and ranking that. So I mean, it sounds like you're doing that as a community and keeping an eye on things. So we don't want any surprises, I guess. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman. Over here. So a question for the director.
Sponsor is just planning to not move forward with the project. This mic keeps cutting out. So you can look at it basically as a withdrawn project. It doesn't really need a recommendation in my mind. I suppose the recommendation at this point would be to relinquish the funding, go through the process of relinquishing the funding and returning it back to water development account, and then receive the funding back from the city on the little bit of money spent on the design.
Any other questions? Commissioner Slackwater? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Might as well just stay there. Yeah. So the next project, sorry. Is on page 48. And this is the Sheridan Northeast Transmission and Extension 2023, also for the city of Sheridan. This is a water transmission main to the northeast section of town that would provide a loop for the city and provide some transmission improvements to that area of town. Also would address some development opportunities for future growth. The city has requested roughly $2.4 million. I believe we provided pre-construction funding last year, but based on the current funding availability and progress of the design, it's less than 30% complete. They don't have easements in place at this time. So our recommendation at this point would be to do not fund. But we do think this is a good project and will probably be a demand on the program in the future. So it would be one maybe for the Select Water Committee to consider for general funding.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So I don't want to go back, but I do kind of want to go back to the last one. So obviously there was money that had been obligated at some time by the water development for that project. Because they were asking for an increase or time extension. And so has that amount that will actually probably revert somehow, you've obligated it, so it's not, is it figured into your total? And we have that ability, for example, if it was this project, we could obligate that for this project if that was something that everybody wanted to do. Is that a question that's accurate or inaccurate?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sure we could probably figure out a way to put that into the omnibus bill.
Okay, so I think there's options moving forward, right? For the town of Sheridan, they gave up some money. Maybe if this is a good project, perhaps we can put it back towards this project. But that's just something to think about, I think.
Mr. Chairman.
You, Mr. Chairman. Along those same lines, what would be how much are we reverting and how much money are we talking about? If we compare the two, how much would we be able to put toward that project? And then how much would be new money, if that makes sense?
Mr. Chairman, the reversion, and again, part of that would be a repayment, but from the airport main or the Sheridan area water supply transmission 2020, the original funding was $3,102,100. And the request from the sponsor on the Northeast project is $2,447,510. Now, again, this was for their original pre-construction was for 67% grant. We'd have to consider, do we want to provide 67% or fall in line with more of the 50%? But if we were to do the 67%, I think based on what initial look we took, our recommendation would be $2,351,700. So in summary, there would be enough from the previous project to cover a 67% grant on this project.
Hicks, you had a question?
So, yeah. A question and a comment. It seems like if going forward with all of the other new projects are 50%, we probably ought to maintain that. That's just a cost of doing business, which actually dovetails into my current question for the project sponsors. So in 2020, you came and asked for a $3 million appropriation for a project. And now you're saying you don't want to do the project, we want to do another project. So do you have a master plan? And is that master plan include the other water service entities up there, the Sheridan area water improvement? Get that answer.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, yes, there is a master plan. It was just dated 2019, essentially completed in 2018 under a level 1 study. It does include the entire Sheridan area water supply boundary. So to answer the question of, yes, it's inclusive of the city of Sheridan plus what we refer to as SAWS service area. We look at that as one complete, it's one integrated water supply distribution and system. And so we study it and evaluated it under the master plan as in that light.
So
And to
the
answer
next
the question of the two projects, the previous project we just got done talking about is really a replacement or a rehab project of nature. This Northeast Transmission Project is a new supply and with a completely different goals in mind. They're both identified in the master plan, but with different objectives and goals in mind. And so that's why they kind of came together. And I think they came together too because the airport transmission line we refer to started in 2020. The other one came on board in I believe in 2021. So they're starting to overlap in terms of funding just because of timing and frankly costs. The previous one we just talked about was delayed last year due to costs. We applied for ARPA funding to try and get some relief from that inflationary cost. And then a year later, it's another several $1 million more. And so that's how we got to where we're at here today. I would just say completely different goals and impacts on the system.
Mr. Chairman. So the natural question is so where do these projects rank out in the master plan? So if we spend all the money developing a master plan, it seemed logical that we'd want to follow that bar some catastrophic consequences that was unexpected, AKA acts of God. Mm-hmm. Where do these projects fall within the master plan? And have you been following that? Or did we waste our money on the master plan?
Prioritize project within the city of Sheridan part of the service area. There's 3 other transmission main projects that would extend out into the SAW service area that are not being requested at this point, but they're growth driven projects within what we consider the rural area of the water service area.
Chairman. So as you previously stated, the master plan covers the entire city of Sheridan plus the district.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
What I just heard you say is, but this project is only in the master plan for the city of Sheridan.
That's not how I intended it. It's one master plan, but if you had to say projects that are being driven by whether it's the city of Sheridan or the rural service area, this one is being driven by growth and needs within the city of Sheridan. And it is, if we had to say a transmission line project that would be owned by the city of Sheridan, this is our #1 priority project as per the master plan.
And so just one more follow-up. We have a master plan for both districts. What kind of operating agreement? Because you may be operating as a regional project, but it doesn't function as a regional project because as you've just described it, it's really 2 different legal entities. If they wanted to pursue something, they would have to come on their own. City of Sheridan wouldn't sponsor an application for something for the rural district. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
All right. Thank you.
Bullshit.
I'm just questioning. So we have a line that we know will need replaced. It's leaking. It's, whatever's going on with it. And then we're looking at expanding and creating a new line. So can you just give me the rationale I get that it's expensive, but I don't know that we'll ever see a decrease in expense at this time. We can all hope for that, but it might be pie in the sky. So what I'm asking, I guess, is why are we adding new rather than taking care of what is already existing, because then in the future, we're on the hook for both you guys and us. So can you explain that?
The replacement of the line is to rehab what has been described as an old or deteriorating water line. So the question really there is, do we replace that at all costs? And that's what we really had to, are we at that point where we replace it at all costs? Or can we get some additional useful life out of this asset? And to put it in perspective, the line is not leaking. We've had 5 documented leaks on that line in the last 16 years. So if you say that's a lot and it's going to fail tomorrow and there's nothing we can do about it, then maybe it's something we got to spend the money at all costs to accomplish. Well, we're not there. We're not even close to that. And that's where we're at. Is it worth the $11.3 million so that we don't have repair costs to fix a line if and when it does leak? And you can do a lot for that amount of money. And the city of Sheridan is the operator of that system. And we know all too well how to operate, maintain, and repair that line. There may become a point where we can't fix it anymore. It's too costly to do that. But we'll know that well in advance to when we get to that point where we can say it's now is the time to spend more money to accomplish that. We just don't feel like we're there yet to justify the expense. Costly to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is more for Director Mead. So we have, I mean, if we revert the money that they're giving us back on the one, basically the airport main, in a way, it seems to me that it might be better to say, instead of saying, okay, well, since Sheridan's reverting the money, we should give the project to the Sheridan other project, versus saying, what about Happy Valley, where they have ARPA funds that might be lost? And does it matter where we revert the money to? I mean, really, I think that's more of a select water issue ultimately, if they're going to try to get general funding, for example, Happy Valley. But can we revert the money to whatever project, or can select water revert the money to any project versus Sheridan to Sheridan?
Mr. Chairman, that would be up to you as a body and the Select Water Committee when we're the account and then being reappropriated to some other project.
So, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so Jason, under that scenario, was that already calculated into the biennial distribution? Was the inversion included into your calculus of trying to do the biennial split funding of the balance in the accounts?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, no, it was not, because we weren't exactly sure how the reversion would take place. So we didn't want to count it towards this year's available funding. So the 18 million we talked about available for year one of the biennium, it's not included in that. So if we didn't revert it, then next year we'd have another 3.1 million and change in the account for next year's projects.
So, Mr. Chairman, just the logistics on that, because that's an existing contract. If the city of Sheridan was inclined to basically, write the commission a letter and revert those funds now, that credit would be in the account prior to the legislative session starting to reappropriate this money. Chairman, just believe that's how that worked because of the contractual obligations and that existing appropriation. And so if that could happen, prior to the January meeting, that would up the balance by about 3 million, which would cover this project. And then it comes back to the question of what percentage grant loan would the commission recommend? Is it going to be the 50 or the 67? So, but if we can check with that, I believe that scenario is possible as far as, reversions on that, but could we get clarification on that? Which would cover this project when it comes back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David Ray, I'm the fiscal manager for the office. You're absolutely correct. When we get out of that contract and in effect remove that obligation, the funds are reverted immediately. From an accounting standpoint, we prepare these fiscal projections at fiscal year end. So we wouldn't technically recognize that till next fiscal year end, but in effect, the funds would be available in concept.
When we get out of that contract, remove that obligation. Any other questions? We'll move on.
Would there are some other people that have joined online that would like to comment. They are not associated with the sponsor, I don't believe. I'm not quite sure who they are. Okay.
Take a break
We'll take
now.
a break now.
Try to address everything.
Okay, sounds good.
10 or 15 minutes. Thank you. Okay. 10 or 15 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, Donna. Hello, Donna.
Joe, can you hear me?
I can, Senator. I can hear you fine.
I don't think they can hear me in the room. I don't know if they can hear us. I think that's the issue.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to work with Donna on. I'm chatting her too.
Okay. Well, so let me know. I'll try to stay close here. I'm gonna run real quick, take a break here, but I'll be right back. So
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's the issue. Okay. Well, so let me know. I'll try to close down. So, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Rust.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Hello, PBS. Can you hear me now? Testing 1, 2, 3, 4.
Those doing the testing, this is Brian Miller. I can hear you.
Hey, thanks, Brian. No, this is Joe Peterson. I'm with LSO IT.
Oh, okay.
They can't seem to hear any of you panelists in the room. So I'm trying.
And I know there's at least 3 people that want to talk about these 2 projects. Sure.
Yes. All I can do is trying to help them figure it out.
I can also hear you and
cool. Thank you. They just can't hear us in the room. It's something on that PBS computer they have plugged into the speakers or something. They're rebooting it right now.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mitch Canjamilla, I can hear this also.
Okay,
Yep,
yeah, I think all this on the Zoom
I hear you,
call
Mitch.
can hear it.
And I just talked to Dan. He said he can hear it too.
Yeah, we can all hear each other on the Zoom call. It's just that room, the Zoom call in the room, they're having a problem with.
Because I'd heard Mayor Shock earlier as well.
You know, I heard him on the I was watching it on the YouTube feed and I could hear him just fine.
Yeah, so I don't know what's going on, but
Yeah, I can hear all of you guys. Fine.
hello, Senator.
Howdy.
Technology is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Guessing I should have probably taken the day off and from work and come down there, but
I can hear all of you guys. I can hear all of you guys. Howdy.
Yeah, just FYI, they can hear us on YouTube too.
okay, good. Got nothing to hide.
Oh yeah.
Guess I should have probably taken the day off and from work and come down there.
Little delay. Delay.
Yes.
Testing.
Hello, PBS. Can you hear me now as a panelist?
Hey, Joe. We can hear you now, yes?
Can you? Can you hear me now, Donna?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, Senator Grew, could you speak, or another panelist, please speak to test out in the room? Any panelist, please speak. Brian Miller, are you there?
Looks like we.
Yep, I'm here. I was just on mute.
Did you hear Brian there, Donna?
Brian has his
Yes, I'm
mic
here.
on, but I haven't heard Mitch.
Yes, I can hear you.
Is that
Yes, Mitch Canjamilla, I can hear you.
Brian Miller, are you there?
looks like we. Daniel Reinke, can you try turning your mic on? Has his mic on?
Are you hearing those other gentlemen talk there, Donna? Yes, it's Angelo, I can hear you.
I heard Mitch, I heard Brian.
And you're hearing me, right?
If Senator Guru would
Hello?
like to turn his mic. I think we just heard Senator Guru.
Hello? Yep. Can you hear me now? Testing 1, 2, 3.
We can hear you and see you. Thank you.
Okay, good deal.
Just 1, 2.
All right, sounds like they got it figured out. I'm gonna leave the Zoom call now, Donna, and go back to the YouTube feed.
For help, Joe.
You bet. Have a
Thanks,
great
Joe.
one. Can you hear me now? All right.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We think we got some of our technical difficulties back online, so why don't we go ahead and get back into the conversation?
Mr. Chairman, LSO let me know in regards to their sound system. If we're not using our mics, we can try to shut them off. That might help just because of the frequencies of the different microphones. So just a little piece of information before we get started again.
I believe we also have some people online that want to make some comments. So if we're ready to move on, let's take some of those questions online.
So the folks online, if you would introduce yourself and announce who you're with, that would be appreciated.
Yes, Mitch Canjamella, sauce customer, Sheridan, Wyoming.
And Brian Miller, Sheridan, Wyoming, city and Saws customer in Sheridan, Wyoming. And Dan Rinke, if he can get his microphone fixed, he just called me saying that
I'm on
there he
here.
is. Great.
Sheridan County resident, Big Goose Valley, part of the Saws water system.
For getting in here and asking your questions. Are you guys just kind of going to run together, or you have individual comments that you guys want to make? We can start with Mitch if you'd like, and ask away.
Yes, I've been a Saws customer for 30 years now, and what you're not being told is that the city of Sheridan is trying to take over the entire Saws system and dissolve it from being a joint powers board. And basically, they currently owe $680,000 to the system. And this Northeast project is not needed whatsoever. And I would urge you to continue to follow the WWO recommendation of do not fund. All this Northeast transmission line is a handout to a Houston developer. Meanwhile, we've got a system with ductile iron pipe that's 50 years old. I'm ending up with rust in my pipes, etc. And the city continues to move forward with trying to dissolve Saws. And I can't urge you enough to do not fund this project. Thank you.
What's comments? Brian, do you have something to add to that?
I do. I just wrote up something that I'd like to say. It covers some of that, but it covers a bit more as well. If you indulge me for a moment here. Mr. Chairman, committee members, commissioners, my name is Brian Miller. I'm a Sheridan County city and county property owner here in town. I have water bills on both the city and the Saws. And I have a couple of both of these projects actually raise concerns with me, both the Northeast Transmission Extension and the one that is being canceled now. I don't quite understand why the first one was canceled or why they're looking to cancel that. As was mentioned earlier, I greatly appreciate the folks that said, hey, this is a need that you have. Why are you nixing it and then wanting to go do this other project? If as you read through that other project, you see they're trying to double the size of the city. Basically, we've already got a 50% increased capability with the system that we have on the size of the city. This is not needed on the Northeast side, and there's a lot more political issues involved in that. And we just had a big an issue with the Saws Joint Powers Board, which Mitch mentioned, that involved several hundred people coming to a couple of meetings to get that put off for now. It's not dead, but it's put off for now. These two projects are related. And one of the issues by canceling this one was to get exactly what was being talked about. To have you say, well, they canceled this one, let's go ahead and do this other one. It's unnecessary whatsoever. The line that needs to be replaced is primarily feeds 70% of the current Saws customers. It also feeds somewhere in the range of 20% of the city customers. It, along with a whole lot of other projects that are in the master plan, needs to have some repairs done. The city of Sheridan's water pipelines and sewer pipelines, for that matter, are not doing well. Just 3 years ago, it was stated that there's $100 million worth of maintenance that needs to be done and work that needs to be done on those. So it makes no sense that we're going to extend and try to grow the city to the point that the current population is not going to be served by repairing and replacing what we have. There's a lot more I could talk about, but as Mitch pointed out, there's a lot you're not being told about this. Those 50-year-old ductile iron pipes, I have documentation showing that there's a lot more leaks that have been mentioned. I have documentation about the fact that the county commissioners had signed an agreement with the city to pay half of all the costs above the money that you all had provided for that airport pipeline project. And the county was not consulted when the city decided to ditch it. There's an MOU out there saying that would happen. You weren't told that either. This is a project, and you'll probably hear a lot more from folks in the future if this comes up again before the city gets its pipelines fixed. This is not only a common sense issue. Let's fix what we got before we try to create a whole bunch of new. And it's a political issue as well. And I'd hate to see this board, who does wonderful work, be brought into the political fight on this process. That's all I have to say, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you for those questions and comments and being so precise and to the point. We do appreciate that. There was one more gentleman with you guys. Did they want to make a comment?
Yes, this is Dan Rinke. Thank you for hearing our voices today, Madam Chair and Chairman and Commissioners. I just want to voice, somebody stated there on the board earlier, there's needs versus wants. There's definitely a lot of wants on the list for City of Sheridan, and part of it is they're wanting this northeast line. They want to go across 2 miles of rural area, but they want full control of the whole thing. That's why they were trying to dissolve SAWS. They knew to go forward with this, they needed control of the full system, but they don't have the support of the rural people. And we really need to take care of the 70% of the people that are on SAWS that are fed by this airport transmission line. And I just ask that no further consideration be given to new projects until the needs are taken care of. If we lose that 70% for the SAWS customers, they're already having pressure issues because of the leaks. They say there's not a problem, but I've been told by the SAWS administrator that they are having trouble maintaining pressure on that other 70% of SAWS. So we really just need to focus on taking care of the needs of this water system. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Do we have any questions from Select Water or the commission for the gentleman's online? Senator?
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, and as I understand it, the SAWS is operated by a joint powers board. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is that correct?
So joint powers boards are eligible for participating in water development programs. And if this project was so important to SAWS, why have they not submitted an application to do this water pipeline themselves?
Mr. Chairman, this is Brian Miller.
Somebody online or?
Yes, this Brian Miller, if you mind.
Mr. Chairman, I can answer that.
Somebody online?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Brian Miller online. I have a copy of the MOU that was signed in 2019 with the county to go ahead and cover those costs. It was agreed that the city would just put it in at that time, would put this forward at that time because it's a city-owned line, wholly city-owned portion of the system. That's why it went in through the city, and the MOU is what would allow the county to pay to create that, to make that happen.
Senator, did that answer your question or?
Because the line is owned by the city, then the city had to be the sponsor of this grant. And that's kind of how we got to where we're at. SAWS, there is an existing MOU for the sponsor match, because SAWS does benefit. These systems are completely interconnected. The city operates the entire thing under one water supply number. And we contract operational maintenance services out to SAWS. So because the city owns this particular line in question, we were the sponsor of that of the grant.
Did that answer your question? Representative?
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe this is a comment for those online who are commenting against it. So I did bring up the Sheridan Water Master Plan, and this is a recommended project on it. So I guess I'm trying to understand what the political motivations are to block the extension. And is it to stop growth in Sheridan? Is it to stop development of the specific piece of private property that it goes towards? Help me understand what the political motivations of trying to say that this transmission line should not go forward.
Yes, Mitch Canjamella again. SAWS water was paid for by the county resident. And now the city of Sheridan is trying to create a dissolution to get rid of that SAWS board for their own benefit, while they themselves owe $680,000 against the system because they are not fiscally responsible enough to actually operate it themselves without borrowing money from the county resident. The system itself is 50 years old in a lot of spots. We've got leaks in the line and everything else, and now they're trying to basically create a northeast transmission line to service customers that don't even exist, while the customers that do exist are being neglected. And that's my problem with this project. Thank you.
And this is Brian Miller. I'd like to say that there's no one trying to stop this project in the future. This is just a project that does not need to be done right now. It is the point in fact that the city has said they can't afford to do the actual repairs that are out there. It makes absolutely no sense to the community as to why we're trying to extend it when we already have infrastructure where we can increase the size of the city by 50% right now. There's no reason that we need to throw an extension line out there that's going to be, by the way, on wholly county property, except for the connections at both ends. Again, that is a project that probably should have included SAWS on it. And you'll note that SAWS was not included on that one, even though the entirety of the project, except for the ends, is going to be built in county controlled property. So there's nothing saying that we want to stop this in the future. It's just this is not something that needs to be done now.
Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a clarification on the before mentioned ductile iron pipes. Are they concrete lined ductile iron pipes, or are they ductile iron pipes without a concrete lining? That's my question.
They're ductile iron pipes. No concrete lining.
Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. And I forgot your name.
Mr. Chairman, Dan Roberts.
Dan, thank you. So explain to me just, and probably I just missed it, but obviously you're the city of Sheridan, so you're under the city administration, and which is a form of government, and town councils and all of that. And then you got a joint powers board, and the joint powers board, this is between the city of Sheridan and who else? The county?
Mr. Chairman, that'd be the city of Sheridan and Sheridan County and the SAWS Joint Powers Board.
The SAWS Joint Powers Board is between the city of Sheridan and the county, right?
Mr. Chairman, they were created by the city of Sheridan and Sheridan County. And we have a three-way operating agreement by which we operate under.
And so the SAWS, the Joint Powers Board, who sits on that board? It's appointed members that are appointed by who?
Mr. Chairman, that would be the county commission. And so 3 members on the board are from the county commission and 3 members from the Sheridan City Council.
All right, I guess that's kind of what I figured, because that's what most, I would guess that whatever recommendation is coming out of that board, SAWS, or your board, is coming from local government that is elected by the people. So I would assume there's some support for the project that you're talking about in these entities, is there not?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. There is support. As we've discussed, it is a project identified in the master plan as a transmission project within the city of Sheridan, or serving the city of Sheridan's system.
And so I guess my final question is to the project that was pulled back by that Joint Powers Board in discussion about the cost of the project. And that is people that are basically representing, they are people that are representing the people themselves. I mean, this is a government board created by elected officers. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, the city of Sheridan is the project sponsor of and we own the line on the project that we are relinquishing funds on. So that is a city of Sheridan decision to do that.
Okay, thanks. Now I understand. And did the Joint Powers Board, final question, Mr. Chairman, did the Joint Powers Board weigh in on that decision? Does that decision to pull that back affect them, which I assume it does since it's a main water line? And did they weigh in to the town of Sheridan as a board on that decision?
Mr. Chairman, clarifying point, the city of Sheridan maintains and operates the entire system. So that our contract with SAWS is to deliver and water supply to their system and maintain and operate it. We're assuring that we're continuing to do that, and we'll continue to do that. The pulling back of this project is really about fiscal responsibility and the cost versus the benefits we're trying to receive from it. That's purely the decision made here. To be forced to go forward and spend $11.3 million in this case is purely with the intention of just not having to fix a line if it should happen to leak. Those costs that we're experiencing aren't to the degree that it warrants spending this kind of money. And so we're trying to be good stewards of all the resources. We understand the potential of getting a grant here, but it's not about that. It's about the total cost. And that's really our approach to this thing and why we're relinquishing the money. It wouldn't matter if it was 100% grant. That kind of money to what we're trying to accomplish is not warranted.
So, Mr. Chairman, I apologize, but I want to just keep following this thread a bit. So what I want to understand is, did SAWS, this Joint Powers Board, one, does their area get water from the one that you are relinquishing? That's the first question.
Mr. Chairman, if you look at it volumetrically, how the system's interconnected, the capacity of that line, it is a true fact to the degree that we can calculate that about 70% of the supply through that line goes out to feed that rural system. So it does serve them directly and has been since was put in the 70s.
So, Mr. Chairman, the second question of that is, did the Joint Powers Board, when Sheridan made the decision to not continue with that, to continue to try to find the 11 million. Did the Joint Powers Board weigh in at all, say, hey, no, don't do that? Or, yeah, that makes sense? Or did they know at all? So how did the Joint Powers Board react to that?
Mr. Chairman, they did not, they were not asked to weigh in on that, no.
And they did not weigh in on that.
And Mr. Chairman, they did not weigh in on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Brian Miller.
Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to get a better understanding of this. I'm going to try to, I'll say something, you tell me if I'm right, or correct me if I'm wrong. So you have a system that you own the transmission lines, and SAWS is another Joint Powers Board that has an agreement with you to purchase water from you, I assume, from that transmission line. Is that the general layout of what you have? Or I guess I don't know, understand just the prior comments that were made. I'm trying to understand just the relationship between you, the city of Sheridan, your transmission system, and SAWS. I mean, what are the entities, and how, and what agreements are there between you to do the water, I assume, water delivery and then charge it?
Mm-hmm. SAWS is a complicated thing by agreement, but it's simple. And when you look at how things are connected and operated, so SAWS was built with Water Development Commission money back in the 80s, and also cap tax money, local money. That was brought together to build SAWS. So it's a pretty unique system in the sense that it serves a pretty vast rural area around Sheridan and in Sheridan County. It serves all the way out 9 miles south to the town of Bighorn, including a dense rural subdivision around the Potterhorn golf course. Many of you may be familiar with that. But it's one interconnected system with the city of Sheridan. So we don't master meter or wholesale water to them. The city has complete operation and maintenance responsibility of the entire system. And we do all of the administrative aspects when it comes to billing and collections on metering. And so essentially, you could say the city runs the entire water system.
Follow-up question. Yeah, so what does SAWS do? I mean, what's their purpose? And if you do all the maintenance, so you own all the infrastructure, you take care of the transmission lines, you do the billing, what is their purpose? Could you help me with that? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, the system, when things were originally built, it had debt on it associated with it. Most of the debt's been retired on the SAWS system as far as its original development. But through that creation of it, there remained ownership of assets. And so there's, throughout the system, there's very differing sections of ownership of certain sections of a transmission line, or a Big Goose water treatment plant was built when SAWS was created, and that's owned 67% by SAWS and 33% by the city. So you have this connected system, but then we have kind of on the periphery sections of ownership of various components. When you get farther out into the system, SAWS owns all the assets. So really you're talking about governance that really oversees the assets and provides representation to what they refer to as the county customers. That's the only reason. So we ask ourselves that question a lot, and why the question of dissolution has come into play is if we just had it operated under one system, it would be more efficient and cost effective to do so, because you don't have that other layer of administration and costs associated with that. So that's been in talks that they referred to in this on their comments. It was initiated by SAWS itself, not the city, but it's all aimed at reducing costs to the ratepayers.
Any other questions? I think somebody online, was it Dan that had a comment or a question?
Brian Miller does.
Anybody online?
Yes, sir. Brian Miller's
Brian?
here. Yes, it is complicated, but it's not that complicated. There are water rights that are involved in SAWS. There's a lot more beyond that. Yes, SAWS pays the city to maintain the lines. The entire system, more of the system is actually in the county than in the city overall. There's a lot of concerns with that. I do have if the board's interested in the documentation of emails going back and forth just since mid-October, after the decision was effectively made to dissolve or to send that money back, where the SAWS director has asked to have meetings on this. They were not consulted at all on this. So that is, I want you to get the whole story. And if you want all that, I can send all that stuff to the board.
Comments from anybody online?
Yes, Mitch Canjamilla again. The Joint Powers Board is there for a reason. It represents the county customer, which is the SAWS customer. And Dan Roberts is not being totally honest with you. He's been promotional to the hilt in dissolving that Joint Powers Board so that they can do whatever they want with the board without representation to us. Thank you.
Am I wrong, or isn't the county commissioners the only one that can dissolve that board?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. The city council and the county commissioners through joint agreement. Yes.
Thank you. Senator?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just to switch gears just a little bit on the northeast transmission line that the request is currently for. Who owns that property that the transmission line would be placed on? And is there currently easements in place for that if it's not owned by the city of Sheridan?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know the direct name of the property owner. We could get that to you, but it's a piece of intervening property. The city has annexed a piece to the I would say it's contiguous on three sides on the area that we would cross with the transmission main, but it is a big, large piece of county property that somebody has purchased. And I know we're in discussions with them now in the easement acquisition process as we speak.
Okay, so it is not owned. It's the annex. As you talked about annex, has all of that land been annexed into the city's boundaries at this point in time?
Mr. Chairman, not a portion of where this transmission line is still in the county.
Okay, thank you. And the county has sold that to a private individual, correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
And you are in negotiations for an easement, correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner?
Just one more question. Is it this city, I guess, is that area to be developed within the city's growth plan? We're not talking water development plan, but it's the city's plan or the county's plan for future annexation to the city?
Mr. Chairman, it is within what we refer to as our urban service area, which previously has been like this donut area around a municipality where you plan for municipal services. And so it is directly adjacent to the city limits and is within that urban service area. So yes, it is within the city's growth plan. Whether the owner of that property wants to develop it to that way, I can't account for that now or say what their intentions are, but yes, simply put, it is within the projected growth plan.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Director Mead. I just have a question. If it is that we are, as a water commission, approving funding for fairly large for this Northeast transmission line, if it's some Houston developer that's bought all this and is going to be annexed by the city, how do we normally, shouldn't the developer pay for that? How does that work in general with the water commission, and where should we be headed?
Mr. Chairman, we wouldn't basically put a line out there just for development. In this particular case, it's a looping line that benefits the entire system because for maintenance and operational purposes, but it also falls in line with the future development and growth of the city, which came out of that master plan. So if it was just to go out and service a development, then we would not do that.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator.
So a follow-up question is, because this Northeast transmission line will go into lands that are outside the city's boundaries. So I'm assuming those lands are currently a part of the SAWS area of jurisdiction because they're outside. So there's areas of SAWS that are not covered at all in rural Sheridan County.
Mr. Chairman, this line is not connecting to or expanding any portion of what the SAWS system or SAWS customers.
I understand that, but it's outside of the city limits, correct?
It connects partially in the city limits and ends in the city limits, and in between, it's outside of the city limits.
Okay. So the question I have, that stuff that's outside the city limits, is that within SAWS service area?
I want to answer this in a way that you can understand, Mr. Chairman, but we would consider everything the Sheridan area water supply service area. So to the boundaries of our master plan, it's in the SAWS service area. This section is within the urban service area, which is our planning boundary to receive urban services. And so it is planned and identified as an extension of the city's water system.
So, Mr. Chairman, just for us members of the legislature that have been, we've had a lot of fights over the years on municipal jurisdiction outside of municipal boundaries. Good fences make good neighbors. And I'm just cognizant of the fact, whether it's garbage or roads or city ordinances that move out into rural areas within the last decade have not been very popular within the legislature. And I just, it gives me a little bit pause to say now we're going to allow municipal jurisdiction for water projects to move into rural areas because it's part of the municipal water project, even though it's not within the city limits. And so I think it's an unresolved issue that hopefully we can clear up, but there is a clear jurisdictional boundary of what the city has, and that's within your municipal boundaries. There's a clear jurisdiction of what the county has, and the county is the member of the Joint Powers Board here. And because the line goes into a different jurisdiction, it's disconcerting that we don't have, and maybe there is, complete agreement with the county commissioners and the Joint Powers Board about allowing the line from a municipality to go out and service, but completely be under the jurisdiction of the municipality. It's not a clean line of jurisdiction. And in those cases, I'd like to see a unanimous support for these type of projects, given the history that we've had in the legislature the last decade of these clear and distinct jurisdictional boundaries. So just a thought process, Mr. Chairman, is just something that's out there.
Mr. Chairman, I think what I currently have heard is we've got an issue that you haven't annexed the property yet, the city of Sheridan onto the county. So the next question I would have is, do you have an MOU or a resolution from the Board of County Commissioners that is in favor of what you're proposing? I think those are some things that I'd certainly would like to hear of, because that battle does rage on between counties and cities and jurisdictional boundaries. So do you have any of those things currently?
Mr. Chairman, through the planning documents and the planning process, by establishing, again, I'll say this urban service area boundary, that is through an MOU process. It's how a community can plan to systematically grow. So it's an agreement with the city and county and has statutory implications that you can, it's agreed that within that area, the planning would be for urban services. So naturally, urban service utilities would have to be, is a big part of that. And that's really what we're talking about here is this, apart from all the system benefits that this transmission line will accommodate, it is going to provide the potential for somebody to extend urban growth adjacent to it within that boundary. So a lot of our transmission systems have historically been in county, originally county areas, but within that growth area, not entirely outside of it. And so naturally putting a transmission line in something that's already been developed is not how planning typically happens. And so most of our master plans do predicate on that philosophy.
Follow up. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, but that master plan is not a document that will force the county into agreeing with this. That's just your planning document that you both agreed to at one point in time. So my point would be is you're expanding beyond your boundaries. You know, you're making a proposal to go into the county without prior county approval or annexation. Forget the master plan of what your planning is. I mean, that's a planning document, I understand, but that's no legal authority to go into the county. You can't breach the county without having an agreement with the county when it comes to expansion of a city into a county. I think that there's the crux to that issue there. And I do appreciate planning, and I know you have to, but I don't know how you can say with any certainty, unless you had an agreement or an MOU or a resolution, say from the county, saying they agree to such a proposal. And I haven't heard you mean you don't have that, do you?
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't very clear in my explanation. The agreement isn't in the master plan. When we develop master plans, when you approve level 1 studies, part of the planning that goes into that is looking at land use plans, both in the city and the county, and especially in this case, because our water system is planned all the way out into the county. So our master plan looks at that, looked at the planning documents that those are referenced and what the projected land use plans are to be. Through MOU in those documents is really what says, here is the defined urban service area. So that's where the MOU lies, where we're predicting in our land use planning, city and county, urban services to reside. When we develop our master plan, we take that into consideration. So that's how it all flows together and how we get to where we're at.
Can I interject this a bit? I was a county commissioner for Laramie County. And what we would typically see, this kind of stuff happened all the time. We would typically see somebody would have approached us for a resolution, and we would have had a resolution. Then, even though, we had an MOU years ago that would have been signed from other county commissioners for that county. So I think what the senator's asking is, does the current county commissioners, do they want this project? Have they agreed to a resolution, or are they favorable for this project?
Mr. Chairman, I can't answer that because that question has not been asked of them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I was a county commissioner for 8 years and dealt with this extensively with these issues. And I can assure you, you can't pierce the county boundaries because of some planning document. I mean, unless you have a resolution in place to do such a thing. So I would ask that maybe you could look into that maybe and, get an answer. Maybe they're amenable to it. I'm not saying they're not. I just don't know without some documentation that states that, this is a go in their eyes for future development. I do appreciate what you try to do, and I understand it. It's what you need to do for planning, but that's just that's apples and oranges in my mind. So I'd certainly like to hear what the Board of County Commissioners have to say about this annexation or potential change into an agreement, that would go into county lands. I mean, that's my question. I guess maybe I did a poor job of trying to state that, but that's where I'm coming from. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, and I've been doing a little bit of rooting around in your documents while we're having this discussion. And so I found your SAWS Joint Powers Board Agreement, which it seems like was developed to address this exact situation. So it says that every proposed subdivision, planned unit of development, or water main extension applicants shall apply for and secure final written water service agreement acceptable to the administrator and approved by the board, which I'm assuming is the Joint Powers Board, before any taps may be committed to any customer user whose lands are located within such development. So I guess my question would be, why you have a Joint Powers Board that works with the city and the county, and you're looking at county property or property within the county? Why would you want to be dissolving that board now when you almost need it as much as in any other time? I just am trying to understand the rationale behind that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that's a very complicated, I don't even know how to answer that question as far as how the board is dissolving the Joint Powers Board versus this project is they're not even connected as far as timing or purpose. But as far as the Northeast Transmission Project, it's not been typical in the past when we've crossed intervening property where we've had to get permission from the county to support the project via resolution. If it's been within that urban service area and the planning, we've not had to provide that to the commission before, so be glad to do it, but it's new to us and unique to us. I guess that's really where it's at.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just one other question. Obviously, any future growth that's subject to whatever, laws there are, county laws, whatever. But as it was mentioned that this project is only a piece of that this is a loop piece. So what, if you were to rate the two, right? Future growth versus the need for another loop of your system to cure, I guess I would assume to create greater security in your water system. Which one's most important? Is it the loop piece? Is it the potential new growth piece? Which is it?
Mr. Chairman, I would say security in the water system would be number one. New growth, looping in system improvement is really what transmission we're trying to accomplish through that, but also supply to areas that can actually accommodate growth. So that is one of the benefits and needs of land use. And this does that in for this particular area of town. In the master plan, there's another component to this project that would connect it to a higher pressure zone that would further enhance the overall function and performance of that loop system. It's just at this point in time, this particular piece is what's being requested to meet the needs of what we're after.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So really the reason you need a loop, it makes no sense to loop completely within your own boundary because it wouldn't enhance any further service of any other area. So this is just trying to be a little forward thinking on how you how you create that loop to maybe supply some future growth if needed. Whereas if you looped it within your own town limits, you really wouldn't have any additional or any ability to do any additional growth out of that line. Is that fair?
Mr. Chairman, that is exactly correct. And that's how we, the transmission projects, when we plan them out in the master plan, that's one of the big drivers is looking ahead so that supply and that transmission can be in those areas for, that would accommodate the growth of a community or the county in this case, if we're talking about saws.
I think we have a question online. Is that you, Mitch, with your hand up? Does somebody online have a?
Yeah, I would speak to it. Again, just referencing the previous item, the line that needs repaired, it was listed in critical condition in 2019. It's a critical main necessary for the rural customers in the Bighorn and Little Goose Valley. As was stated, 70% of the SAWS customers. I just think that I just want to reiterate that's the need in this community right now. And anything, the new pipeline that's proposed would not be servicing any new customers. Find a look ahead for growth and what you want. But let's take care of the needs of the community first. Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody online for your questions and your comments, and especially keeping those on point. We really appreciate that.
Sirs, if I may, I would interject and let you know that the property that this northeast pipeline would cross has no easement. The property owner has actually been very adamant with the county commissioners that they will not give easement because they have issues with some other stuff going on in the county. So that is not true. They do not have an easement whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Was that you? Was that Daniel? I couldn't tell who that was, but Commissioner, you have one more comment, and I think we're going to hold it to that.
Okay. Thank you. And my background is I worked as a Sweetwater County planner for a number of years, and within Sweetwater County, we have jointly planned with the cities of Rock Springs and Green River, and through our county plans and through city plans, we've identified city growth areas, and the county has adopted certain rules and regulations to help ensure that those areas that are within the city growth areas develop in a manner that is compatible with the city. And there's a reason for that is, cities are part of a county. All residents that live in the cities pay 12 mills county taxes. They're county residents, and cities need to grow. And there's a reason for that is one of the major sources of funding for a city is sales tax, and sales tax is distributed based on population. So if a city wants to increase its economic base, it has to grow. And also cities are important economic engines for a county and for a state. And it's important to help foster city growth. This is not without resistance. I, with John, probably can tell lots of stories about resistance, but it's important, and I'm impressed that the city of Sheridan has looked forward in this. And I guess a question is how much have they, I mean, and there's another point is Title IX of the state statutes is the county planning statutes are in there, and it says county plans must incorporate the plans of its cities. So we also incorporate city plans in our county plans because we're all county residents. And I guess that's how that somewhat ties together. So to what degree has the county been jointly planning with the city and looking at this periphery of the city of Sheridan? Because once an area develops, and it develops in a manner that's incompatible with a city, it's only because of the annexation laws, it's almost impossible to annex an area once it's developed in a manner that's incompatible. So there needs to be great effort to preserve that compatibility, because it's an asset to the community and the state that can be lost if it's not done properly up front. I guess, are you working with the county in your planning efforts?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not in the planning department, so I can misstate some things of fact, but I do know, because we utilize land use plans when we do master planning for such as what we're talking about. The level 1 studies, we use the land use plans to really help form and formulate those studies. The city of Sheridan and Sheridan County have a joint land use plan. So it is it's a document that is created together jointly so that the city's land use plan and the county's land use plan are melded together and they're in sync with each other. And if the cities further defines that within their corporate boundaries, they have also a comprehensive plan that also mirrors what that joint land use plan is. So for Sheridan County, it is a document that they do together.
With that, I'm not going to take any other comments on this project. Part of my great duties up here is to try to keep us from getting out of here in the dark. So we will move along. I want to make sure everybody understands that both these two Sheridan projects on your that you're going to approve here as a block. One was a do not fund and the other one was the relinquish. They do not have anything to do with each other. We're not going to relinquish the money from one, and they're just two individual projects that you guys will decide how you want to move forward on. Director?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd also just clarify on the Sheridan Northeast, which is the one we've been talking about for a while. The office's recommendation, because of the lack of, I guess, progress in the design, the easements and lack of getting easements, and you can add, I guess, the conversation that was just had to that list. We're not recommending moving forward at this time. When they have all that stuff further down the road, then come back for additional funding. The other thing I would mention on the airport main or the Sheridan area water supply transmission 2020, we have a do not fund that was in response to the initial application. Now that we have the letter from the and resolution from the city of Sheridan to relinquish that funding, I would suggest you pull that one out separately and not go with the do not fund recommendation, because it's a little obsolete at this point, and more or less just maybe a recommendation of effectuate the reversion of the appropriation or something to that effect. So we can talk about that again when we get to the end of the list. Okay. All right.
So we still got.
Thank you, Dan. Okay.
Those that were online, we appreciate that.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we are on page 55 of the recommendation notebook. This is the small water project program, and this is the new development portion of the small water program. So we have two. We have rehabilitation out of account 2 for small water, and we have account 1 new development small water that we talk about separately. So this is for the new development. The current balance in that program is $325,120. And looking at the use of that program over the years, which is in the table near the end of the document and onto the next page, we're anticipating we would need to increase that account by $1 million to take care of what we're anticipating for needs in this next year. The other thing that this recommendation does is both programs, new development and rehabilitation programs in small water, by statute, they originally, it's stated in there that no further or no projects will be considered after July 1st of 2025. The same thing when the program originally was initiated was 2014, July 1st of 2014. And as that date approached, we amended that language to extend the program rather than sunsetting the program. So this recommendation also would be to either remove, the sunset date or extend it. And when I say remove, that would just say there wouldn't be a date then when this program were not to fund any more projects. It would be just like any other of our accounts where it would just fund. And the way we do this is, so that's one thing. And then the additional $1 million to prop up that account for this year's program applications. And then the other thing I would mention, we don't have a request for the small water rehab account because it currently has a balance of about $870,000. Last year, we had about $500,000 worth of requests. So we think we're sitting good there. But that account also has that language in regards to no further projects will be funded after July 1st of 2025. So I think it's in the best interest of the commission, the Select Water Committee. This is a popular program. It gets good projects on the ground quickly and leverages a lot of federal funding, equip dollars and other funding that if you have a favorable approval of our recommendation on account 1 of small water, that when we bring the omnibus bill draft in November, that we would effectuate the same date change on the rehab account, whether that be 10 years or just remove the date altogether. So it just goes in perpetuity until at some point they want to put another date on it. If that's clear.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So how long was the time period for the sunset? And I assume that was in statute.
Mr. Chairman, the last time it was updated, it was extended 10 years.
Okay.
So from 2014 to 2025.
So that would be the decision, one, whether to extend it at all, and then the other is to extend it how long or to not have a sunset at all. Is that right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. That being said, I guess our first things would be to pull probably what the small water projects program to the side and the Sheridan, if the commissioners agree, and then get an approval for this block and then address the Sheridan piece and the small water separately.
And Mr. Chairman, I would say depending on which Sheridan you're talking about, the Sheridan Water Supply Transmission 2020, you may want to pull that one. The other one is a do not fund at this time. So agree with that. You could keep that one in the block for the Sheridan Northeast.
Commissioners, do you want to have some of these pulled out, or this is?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we start and take out the small water project and make that motion. And then I think we have sort of a narrow one for the Sheridan area water supply transmission 2020. So I would recommend pulling those two, but the other ones are do not fund and extensions of time. So I would vote on those as a block unless there's someone who wants to pull others off.
Anybody else? Is that okay, commissioners? Okay, well, let's start there then. Do you have a motion for those?
Mr. Chairman, I'd start with the motion on the small water project program, maybe just because it's pretty straightforward. I would recommend the authorization of the program be ongoing and that the sunset date for the program be eliminated and an additional 1 million be appropriated to meet the anticipated project application demands for the small water project program.
We probably need to have select water vote on the sunset date first. Would that not be appropriate?
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest maybe just conversation. They would actually vote on something when it's in a draft omnibus bill. So just get an understanding that they maybe would support something like that.
Would you support it? Okay.
Committee, would you like to weigh in on that now or when we put the omnibus water bill together? Or if you want to think about it a little bit, we could even it just kind of caught up on it. Would you like to have a discussion now? Go ahead, Senator Cole.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I'm in favor of a 10-year extension myself, but that I'm certainly willing to hear people's points of view on why they think maybe that's not appropriate. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
There discussion from the committee?
Mr. Chair.
Hicks? Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I just want to be clear that mine was actually to eliminate the sunset. It was not to extend it for 10 years. I was saying just eliminate it entirely and make it like any other program in the Water Commission account. I don't see really a need for a sunset date on this. It's something we've used, is popular, and it's the same as the other ones talked about the small water rehab that he's going to have coming up. I don't know if that comes in January, but it's going to be coming too. And I would say the same thing, eliminate it.
Okay, and I think the committee might want to have a little discussion on it. As we see our funds tighten, it might be something we just need to talk about. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, I guess I would support that recommendation by the commission, you know, that having probably been the longest serving member on this committee and been around a while is that sunset date was put on there to reevaluate whether the program was to move forward, not to reevaluate. It's been a very successful program and somebody in my employment profession has utilized the program. It's done a lot of good for the state of Wyoming, and it's one program that's probably developed a lot of water across the state for a multitude of purposes and stuff. And so it is a mature program at this point in time. It's been working. And so, you know, at any time, the commission or the legislature can review any program and either eliminate but to just keep the sunset date on there, I don't think is necessary at this point in time, but that would just be my thoughts, given that the fact that this is a very mature program. It runs very well. And for those reasons, I just think you get rid of the sunset and the future date. If there's something happens, it can always be revisited.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, I've conferred with the chairman and he would like to have a recommendation before they move forward with the vote. So do I have a motion on the small water project program?
Madam Chairman, just can I ask a question or make a comment? Before I make a motion anyway. You know, the sunsets, I kind of like sunsets because I think it allows you to reevaluate programs. And I agree that the small water project program has done a lot of good. But I don't think it hurts to have that review every 10 years. Otherwise, it just flows into standard budgets and you never review it. So that's just a comment. I'm not hung up on that, but that's just my opinion. And I'm not the one that's gonna make the motion on this, this small water deal.
It'd be better if you did.
All right, is there any further discussion? Do I have a motion from the committee? Senator Larson,
Chairman, I'll make that motion to fund the small water projects.
right, and would you like to address the sunset date?
I think I'll just leave it the way it is. Yes.
So the sunset date is July 1st, 2025.
Like, I would like to change that, not to 2025. I'd add another, was it 5 years before 10? 2035.
Okay, moved by Larson, seconded by Summers to fund the program with a sunset date of 10 years into the future, so 2035. July 1st, 2035. Any discussion? Discussion, seeing none. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes.
So your motion included the removal of that.
Mr. Chairman, although I know the select water people have voted in favor of keeping the sunset date, I will still stick with my original motion and with Senator Hicks. He has been on this committee for longer than all of us. And he has a great wealth of knowledge, and we can always revisit it, like he said. So I would just say, let's eliminate the sunset and fund the $1 million as I recommended to begin with. We can make a recommendation and the legislature can do as they wish with it after the Water Commission decides what it wants to do. My motion.
We have a second motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Whoop. Sorry. Commissioner Glick.
Are you saying that, this is a question for Lisa? Are you saying that, the sunset day should not be set?
Thank you, Commissioner Glick and Chairman. I am saying that the sunset date would be eliminated and that the legislature always has it within their power, having served there, to go back and look at any program they want to defund or get rid of. And I don't see any reason just to keep every 10 years revisiting it as Senator Hicks has set out. There's not really a need for it. They can always go change it back if they want to.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies my.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, can I get a quick discussion then on how to proceed with the rehabilitation small water projects? When we write up the draft omnibus bill for January, should we mimic that same for the rehab?
Mr. Chairman, I think I indicated, and I'll go ahead and reaffirm that. I think the same thing with the small water rehab, that it should have no expiration date, and that would be my recommendation. And I would so move that you take that into consideration from our Water Commission if I have a second and approval from them for that as well. So I guess I need a second.
Second. And a second. Any further discussion? Any discussion? That being said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we will put those dates in for consideration by both bodies for the January meeting. Okay. Okay. Well, that brings us, you guys have some more things to consider then on Sheridan and then the entire block.
level 3 projects are all in the block.
Mr. Chairman, so if you agree with the Sheridan Northeast recommendation to do not fund, then I would leave that in the block. And I would just suggest probably taking out the Sheridan area water supply transmission 2020 and voting on that separately and changing the recommendation to, you can use whatever language you want, but I said effectuate the reversion of the appropriation. That was the request of the sponsor after the fact of the original application for additional funds. We said do not fund. After all this discussion, they want to relinquish that funding and revert it. So we would just have to effectuate the reversion of that appropriation through cancellation of their contract or their agreement. So I would act on that one next.
So moved. Right? You had a second? Second, okay. So that is exactly how we'll move forward then. We have a motion and a second. Any other question? Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion carries.
And then, Mr. Chairman, you would vote on the rest of the block.
Okay, let's finish up this block and move on. So do I have a motion approval for the level 3 projects amendments?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner?
Mr. Chair, I would move to approve the recommendations of the Wyoming Water Development Office with respect to the remaining projects.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's about 8 minutes till noon. I think the planning projects could move fairly quickly, but I will leave it up to you on whether or not you want to continue forward or not, or how you want to handle lunch. Okay. All right, Mr. Chairman, so now we're moving into level 2 projects in account 1. So these are the planning projects that we considered at the May meeting. And we've gone through the consultant selection process now. Only thing that's changed is instead of the recommendations from May, where it said the price is to be determined, we've included now the cost estimate from the project of from the proposal of the winning consultant that went through all the proposal analysis and the interviews. So the first one is the Burns groundwater supply, level 1 for the town of Burns. This is actually to evaluate the feasibility of developing deep groundwater aquifer supplies to augment their existing wells. So this is the one we talked about briefly yesterday in regards to the cost of this project after coming in through the consultant selection process is $2,010,000. And we are suggesting we do not fund this. It was a due fund in May, but considering the cost of this project and needing to live within our means and the other projects, if we had to cut $2 million out, you'd be looking at 8 or 9 other projects that we'd have to get rid of to compensate for the $2 million. So our recommendation at this time is do not fund. And I don't know if we have a sponsor representative that would like to talk. Judy Johnstone and perhaps Mayor Clark are online.
Sorry, I was trying to get this all straightened out. My name is Judy Johnstone and I am online.
Judy's online, so we have some questions for her on this, or do you have a comment, Judy, that you would like to make?
Well, just I would like to forward the notion that in Burns, for a town of 400, we are trying to be as cautious financially as we can. And yet with our water testing, our nitrite levels continue to climb. And while we are not at a time frame where we need to be ultimately concerned about this, and we have no warnings yet or anything, we're trying to plan ahead and make this happen for the safety and the health of our residents. And so we would really appreciate your reconsideration on this. I understand finances, believe me, but we really do need to go forward with this project if there's any way at all you can help us. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Judy. We do know that is a very important project out there, and that it and of course we understand what nitrates can do in the water. So we appreciate that, and hopefully we in the future we'll be able to find some money if this funding doesn't go through.
Mr. Chairman. A
Senator
question
Hicks.
for
Yeah.
Judy. Judy, specifically dealing with the issue in nitrates, because the program is more focused on water development and not water quality, and we typically don't do water projects unless there's absolutely no alternative. But the question I have in reference to nitrates, what type of because that's the purview of the Department of Environmental Quality to look at water quality issues, including groundwater. Specifically, nitrates are usually derived from natural fertilizers, but the Natural Resource Conservation Service, the local conservation district, and the DEQ all provide technical assistance for nutrient management, non-point source pollution, which this very well may be. What efforts has the city of Burns done to work with both the federal, state, and local governments to address this issue of nitrates that still, my understanding, have not reached any EPA threshold level, 10 parts per million? But what efforts have you guys done to look at this nitrate issue with all these other state and federal?
We are in the middle of a large ag area. And so we're pretty much a captive audience. All of our wells are more shallow. And so the only option that we have to be able to correct this situation is to find water from a non-polluted resource. And that appears to be only a deep well option to us. Thank you.
Senator?
Chairman, I understand the solution to pollution is dilution. But again, back to my question is there is a multitude of federal, state, and local programs to address the issue of nutrient management from agricultural lands, and what has the city of Burns done to engage the Department of Environmental Quality, the individual landowners, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, or your local Laramie County conservation districts to start looking at this to manage the nutrient component of this, so you don't have contamination in your existing well fields, and then we're not in a situation that we're spending millions of dollars to do a dilution project where it may very simply mean just a better job of working with the agricultural application of fertilizers based on the soil types. And so what has the city of Burns done to utilize all these other resources that may be at your disposal to address this issue of non-point source pollution of the groundwater?
Our water people have been discussing this issue with EPA and DEQ for a number of years, actually, because this testing resource has been, we have been on the watch list, if you will. And so we have had to continue testing more frequently than is regularly required. And our guys have talked to everybody pretty much, and the consensus appears to be that the deep well is about the only issue that we, or the only remedy that we can use.
Chairman, just as a follow-up, Judy, can you provide us the documentation of that consensus document from those agencies that that's their only remedy?
I do not have that with me. That is basically just been a side discussion point as we were talking about doing this was, well, we don't really have anywhere else to go, but I don't have those documents myself, no.
Thank you, Judy. Thanks, Judy. Director Mead, are we gonna handle these in this 4 block? Is that what you'd like to do?
Mr. Chairman, for the rest of the block, since we've discussed all these in May and all we're changing is adding in the dollar amounts. I don't know that we need to discuss them individually again.
I don't think we need to.
So it's up to you if you want to handle them as a block now.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. We're gonna put the burns in with this block and the do not fund, and then the rest of the block is just adding the dollar amounts and approval. How does the commission feel? Okay. Do I have a motion?
A motion to do it that way?
Okay, we've got a second. Do we have a motion? We've got a motion, second.
Is that just do it as a
Second.
block?
Yeah, to do it as a block.
Do it as a block, second.
Yeah, okay. We have a motion to do it as a block. The level 2 projects and a second. Any discussion? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion carries. Why don't we go ahead before we get into the next one? Let's go ahead and break out for lunch so that we get everybody back here.
Okay.
Ready to go.
What time do you want us back?
We'll come back here at 1:30. Ready to go. Thank you.